I'm going to start this webinar by welcoming you. So my name is Gabrielle Magnin, and I'm the Resource Inventory Manager for the Community Housing Transformation Center. We are really happy to welcome all of you today to talk about organizational culture and finance. And for that, we'll have the insights of connections for seniors. Note that the chat box is already open, so you can add your question there, and we will take some time at the end of the presentation to answer them. Okay. So before we begin, I'm going to say a quick note. So I will say this in English and then in French. So first, today's discussion is recorded, and it will be in English with interpretation into French. So if you want to listen in English, just don't touch anything. But if you want to listen in French, as shown here, you can click on the globe icon for interpretation. And if you don't have the globe icon, you can click on more, that's the 3 little dots, and you select the French channel. Alors en français, donc la discussion aujourd'hui, elle est enregistrée. On va faire le webinaire en anglais, mais il y aura aussi une interprétation simultanée en français. Donc pour écouter en anglais, juste ne touchez à rien. Et si vous voulez écouter en français, vous cliquez sur l'icône d'interprétation avec le globe ou sur l'icône plus avec les 3 petits points si vous n'avez pas le globe et vous sélectionnez le canal en français. So first, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that I live on the unceded lands and waters of Jojage. No treaty or agreement ceded this place, and I recognize it as the traditional and living territory of the Ghanaian Gehaka. As I recently moved to Montreal, near the Lachine Canal, I reflected on the history of these waters and on how the construction of this canal altered ancestral ways of life and connections. So, in fact, I learned that this canal was built to bypass the powerful Lachine Rapids. But before that, this area was fertile land, and it was a gathering place for many First Nations. But then colonial constructions and policy have displaced and harmed indigenous peoples, and these impacts are ongoing. This acknowledgement matters only if it changes how I live here. So I'm committing to listening and learning from indigenous voices, leaders, artists, and makers. And that includes powerful and inspiring women, such as the Ghanaian Gehaka leader and artist Hélène Gabriel. So she's known as the spokesperson during the Oka crisis, and also an activist and filmmaker, and the Wendat songwriter Anima Ora. And I'm also committing to moving forward with humility and to caring for these lands and waters by reducing my own footprint in respect for the nation to whom they forever belong. So there should be a link in the chat. It is useful if you want to learn more about the territory your home or your work is located. And it is available both in French and English if you want to try it. So if you're not already familiar with us, we are the Community Housing Transformation Center. So the center is the catalyst of the growth and the preservation of community housing in Canada. You can visit our website. You will have plenty of information about us. Note that the center provides various services. So we have funding programs. As well, we have tools and resources. And that's what is bringing us here today. The resource inventory. So note that our webinar today is part of the Center Knowledge Sharing Series. So that's a new series of the center, and it is related to this tool. So this inventory is a tool where you can access a list of resources curated by your team to meet your needs. So you can find there things such as documentation, but also activities and training, financial opportunities, kits, and knowledge sharing activities, as we are doing today. And you can access that online inventory through our website as well. I think you have, I don't see the chat, but I think you have the links in the chat. So we are really, really happy to welcome our speaker of the day, who will be Mohamed Abdallah. So Mohamed is the Chief Executive Officer and the co-founder of Connections for Seniors. His organization is based in Newfoundland and Labrador. Connections for Seniors works to make sure older adults have access to safe and affordable housing, dignity, and the support they need. And Mohamed started the organization in 2018 using his own savings and with a clear mission to support the most vulnerable seniors. And since then, he has helped the organization to grow into a regional leader in seniors housing, innovation, and homelessness prevention. So today, Mohamed you will share with us your experience on how to create a long-term impact without depending on short-term program cycle. And I think that will interest plenty of organizations. And we will also talk about diversified revenues, social enterprise models, and how to align financial strategy with long-term mission goals. So, Mohamed, I'm going to turn things over to you. Can you explain what was the initial problem your organization was created to solve? As in, what is your current vision for your organization? What kind of challenges have you faced as an organization? So, yeah, the floor is
Thank you
yours.
so much, Gabriel. Thank you so much, Gabriel. Thanks for having us today and having myself. And welcome, everybody. So the presentation today will not be able to cover all aspects, but we'll try to be on high level as possible. We'll try to add the narrative to it so it's informative and people can get from it what they can. Of course, have the question at the end. But in 2016, specifically, we saw a gap in service, but that was not the main issue. The issue was more access, coordination, and dignity. We didn't find that the services that are geared towards seniors, particularly. We have seen a lot of seniors that fall through cracks of like other age group being targeted. The services that was provided to them is not meant for their age group, is not meant for their needs, and doesn't understand the challenges that they are going through. As an organization in the beginning, when Gabriel mentioned the resources, it was personal resources in the beginning, and it wasn't enough in the beginning. I remember when we went to purchase our first shelter space. The person that I reached out to, their answer was, that's too much, 20%, and we had to use my 55% at the time. I'm saying that because the journey to build something can have a little bit of sacrifice, can have a little bit of altruism, and also need to have a little bit of understanding that this journey to build has a little bit of learning curve. Today, we'll try to teach those curves and what are the challenges down that path. But to expect something like that when you're building an organization that change the mindset, because you will see some blocks down the road and you will see some blocks as you're moving forward. The consideration for aging was really limited. We saw seniors passing away in shelters. We saw seniors out on the street in the cold, and that was the main trigger. And I remember I was sitting down in the end of 2016 working with somebody, and I was like, must be a solution out there. And I kept doing research and looking across the province, and there was nothing out there that is specifically looking at seniors. I even went and met the only senior organization that was in our province at the time that is doing frontline work. And we wanted to see a change on how the service is being provided in order to be accommodating to seniors specifically. That will focus on more prevention and not just service provided. So, for example, shelters, 6, 7, actually when we started, it was about 8 years ago now. Seems like a long time ago. But when we started, the shelters weren't providing transportation or case management specifically. It wasn't a requirement by funders. It wasn't something that you could invest in. All what they were doing is they take people in and feed them and make sure they have a place to sleep. Uh, After that, on the other side, it even got worse. It started to be an out of cold shelter. People just sleep at night and wake up in the morning and stay on the street. Having case management services and having support to the seniors that we serve was a main goal for us. Having transportation was a main goal for us. And we started to look at how can the service actually be effective? How can it be preventative? How can we serve people so they actually get out of the cycle of homelessness rather than just staying and manage their homelessness as they are staying with us? And that was one of the most important questions that was asked in the beginning. And I remember that was like I said at the time, why does someone have to reach rock bottom before help shows up? How can we change that narrative? And I think that's how we have a mindset to move in the future. I will take the next slide, please. Thank you. We wanted to have individual-centered services. We looked at how seniors are being served, and it wasn't, again, as I mentioned before, it wasn't geared towards them. So to end their homelessness, again, we said we're not going to manage it, but we need to build a one-stop lifespan informed support ecosystem, which means someone drop by, get all the support that they need in regards for housing, for example, and they don't have to be running around to get pieces of one service. Housing is housing. How can we make sure that when they are housed, they are aging safely in place, transition smoothly through levels of care? How can we coordinate between our programs and government programs and so on? That was very important for us in order for us to actually have functional programs, because you can talk about how beautiful the programs are, but they are not as effective. I would say our biggest challenge in that is that when you are doing something different, you need a lot of system change around you. And we are still working with that, and we're still working towards that. But to focus on prevention and stability on our end, it was I would say a shake to the system. We always had that conversation. For example, when we used our funding for our shelter in the beginning, the answer was maybe you guys are charging too much to the shelter system and you need to charge little or less than that. And we said, we are charging the same like everybody else in the sector. He said, yeah, but you're doing too much with it. That itself speaks to that when you try to create a complete functional support system, you will get that pushback. And that pushback will continue to be on different levels the farther you move into the services that you're providing and the more that you advance in the services that you're providing. Why? Because the mindset that created those programs and the culture that created the programs still exists until today. And some of these programs have existed from the 80s and sometimes before that. I will move to the next one, please.
Yeah.
I'm moving too fast.
No, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much. That's very enlightening. And you talk a lot about the mindsets. In fact, during our first discussion, we spoke about the importance of cultural shift in the sector and changing the way we do things, as you mentioned just before. Sometimes at the center, we are calling it a shifting from a program manager mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset. So you said that one time that you think we should adopt a social enterprise mindset, change our mindset at least. But so can you explain how do we get there? Can you give some examples on how you manage your organization with this business model and how it shapes your partnerships, how it benefits connections for seniors?
Mm-hmm. So traditional not-for-profit model is grant dependent, short-term, risk-averse, program boxed. When you create a program, you just want to deliver on it. You want to say that I have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is my report. In my opinion, that needs to change from top down. And we need to advocate for that as community to our government to say we can do better than that. And our trip last year to Finland, talking about housing, and my trip to Denmark after that, really was an eye opening to governments can do that. There is no reason for government to consider community as a subdivision. It could be a partner, it could be someone that is paid for service, and they are using that service model to actually fund their mission, which is supposed to be serving the community eventually. Our problem was how to think long term, how to think systematic, how to think sustainable, and how to make it human centered. This is not about a 2-year program, and I will give a very recent example. When we had our social enterprise funding 3 years ago, we had 2 years to spend the money, as they call it, or as being called in our world of not-for-profit. You had to hire people, you had to do certain things. Some of the funding we had at the time was for marketing, and we reached out to our funder and said, would you be open for us to buy equipments that we can do certain things with it? So we can provide marketing materials, but it can be sustainable over the 2 years and it can serve us for 10 years. It took about 3 months for the approval of that to come through, but it did come through. We had the conversation and we built around it multiple programs. Now we're applying for more fundings, utilizing those equipments that we already have in order to create more informative programs, such as a podcast, such as marketing materials, educational materials, explaining what seniors are going through, and increasing awareness. I'm using that on a small scale, but on a big scale, our funding at the time, someone is saying they cannot hear.
Oh, don't
Can everybody?
worry about the technical problems. We are
Okay.
going to manage them.
Okay.
But we are hearing you.
All right, perfect. So one of the things we have done when we received our funding for the social enterprise, I remember the speech that we had, and Minister of Seniors was at the time doing the announcement. We had a conversation. We had a conversation with everybody, and I remember the way we were visioning this, that it will be a more sustainable program. And someone told me, don't promise anything. And I said at the time, no, I think it's doable. If we apply it, and I said at the time, if this program goes as planned, this is going to be a 10-year program, not a 2-year funding. The result of that program from 4 years ago was we had $800,000 in funding, roughly, give or take, a couple of $100 less than that, but it was about $800,000 in funding. We purchased a social enterprise event space that can be generating income, and now is hiring 3 staff for programming and keeping that programming on an ongoing basis. Now we have an asset as an organization that is worth financially an amount that we can leverage towards creating housing at some point. And we're thinking longer than the age of our programs. So we're not looking at how can I spend this $800,000. I came out of a program with a building that roughly on the market worth the same amount of money that we got on the long term. Yes, you're mortgaging it. Yes, you're paying on the long term, but also you are utilizing an asset in a community for the community purposes, for programs, and it's generating revenue, and it's creating more solutions for seniors. So the mindset of entrepreneurship from that sense created a lot of solutions rather than just thinking about, I can just hire people, I can pay $20,000 to a marketing company, and I can use these dollars in those 2 years and I zip it after that. I would love to see the government changing that mindset and help organizations doing that. When I asked someone in Finland about how did you guys build that many housing units, and now we are formalizing a partnership with them in Finland, talking about how can we learn from their experience. One of the things they told us was, we take service money and we save that money, and then we go to the bank and then we put the money together and we build housing. They have over 30,000 housing units in Finland. That's a big amount of housing. Was that happening over 100 years? No, it was over 30 to 40 years. Can we do that? Yes, we can. As community, as a country, we can. But models needs to be shifted and changed. And that's the advocacy we want to do on a higher level, to start saying, how can we use our money the best way possible? Because when you're forcing community to spend their money, this becomes very difficult. But when we started to do that, we started to think differently, out of the box. Sometimes we get no as an answer, and we find a solution around it in order to fund something else and work on something else that serve the mission, that make that program run for a longer time. Sometimes we're told you're not allowed to shift that money from this position to that position. And when we tell them, but the outcome could be two staff over 2 more years for just moving some funding around, they say, no, you're not allowed to do that. You have to spend it exactly on this. I said, the idea is the outcome. And this is the mindset shift that we would like to see. You cannot resolve or solve 21st century problems or social problems with 1980s operating logic. That logic needs to have a shift. And that's what we're trying to talk about today. However, as an organization, we were lucky and successful and blessed in a lot of ways that we have taken forward steps in order to change that model and shift it from one to another. Being an 8 years old organization, and I know the advertisement said 24 million, but our assets is roughly between 22 and 24 million dollars of value, market value, uh, is something that we didn't target to be, but what we targeted is to create long-term solutions. And long-term solutions force you to create capacity, and capacity forces you to create safety and risk management, which eventually lead to you having long-term assets that can serve other programs. Next, please. Risk. Risk is always something that we talk about. Like, this is so risky, and if I heard that if I want to count, it's the count of every step we have taken to move forward. There was always being scared of risk, and I think the difference between someone that want to achieve something as an organization, and we're not the only organization that do that in Canada. I have met a lot of leaders around the country that are taking risk and they have been achieving, but it's not an embraced culture. It's not a managed culture. Every thought of risk is, this is too risky, but risk is part of growth. Risk is part of advancement. Risk is part of what are we going to do next? It has to be paid attention to, but it's always there. There's always the risk of litigation. There's always a risk of failure. There's always a risk of running out of funding. There's always a risk of doing a lot of things. But if you don't take the first step, you're not going to know how to mitigate that risk and manage it in the future. As long as you're making decision informed by data and by evidence and experience, and I would put experience above all of that, because nobody have a good insight more than the organization itself. If I want to talk about youth, I will reach out to leaders that work with youth. Their insight is unmeasured. It's something that you cannot compete with. Why? Sometimes you're not able to articulate your problem very well, and numbers do not tell the story very well, but your experience and your sense, and I wouldn't call it a gut feeling because it is very well informed by a lot of other interactions that they have in the community and the support that they're providing. But the wealth of that experience, I think it's worth investing in the community. It's very important to be looked at by government. I think it will create and change a lot of our community if we make community experience worthwhile and invested in. And programs are informed by this experience. No matter what you see from your data, it will never become the experience of the organization. I can give you $100,000 to start a program, but when I create those measurements or those broader lines for the program, a lot of the times we miss the important details and create more gaps by creating obstacles. And sometimes we say, you're not allowed to provide less than 20 bits. And I'm like, why? Why are you creating a funding that you are putting such a limit on it? If someone comes to you and say, I can make it more affordable, why don't you just move forward and do it that way? Why are we putting limitations and obstacles for other organizations? These kind of red tapes can be elevated and can be avoided, and it should be looked at from a different perspective. Those organizations, this community is doing this out of experience. They know what they are doing, and we should start to invest with them. But as an organization, you should advocate for your next step. It will not make you the most liked person sometimes in the room, but if you want to be the most liked, as Steve Jobs said, we can sell ice cream. Sometimes we just need to advocate for what we're doing. Sometimes we need to push forward for what we think and believe it's the right thing to do. By the time it would be embraced. Why? Because it works, because it shows success. we have seen we have learned from scaling a lot. So far, we were very lucky as we are moving forward. I'm sure every scaling process have a setback or kind of like a slowdown. It's a nature of our life. We haven't seen that yet. But again, if the goal is never about generating income and owning assets, things will move forward in the right direction. The organization need to have the individuals at the center of their goals. The organization needs to always look at the clients they are serving as what do they need? How can we get informed by their needs in order to create certain programs? But when the program is being created, how can I make that program beyond John Doe or Jane Doe? That I don't want the program to be expiring in 2 years. Because believe it or not, it happens every year that we have a program that shut down. And it's not the best thing for people out there. But as an organization, we shouldn't look at the government as the responsible of doing that. We should look at how can we serve the people we are obliging to serve, or we are vouching to serve, the best way possible, and the best way possible to make sure these programs are sustainable. Is that the most smooth way of doing it? Not, but it's most sustainable. And I think on the long run, you will see programs more functional and more stable as you move forward. Next, please. External culture contest. When we look at reframing not-for-profit revenue and assets as tool for stability, I think this is one of the most important points when you are looking at what you have and what you're creating. If you look at a program at the funding phase of what you have killed your funding the moment you received it, because you were just thinking about how to fill out the budget lines. But if you're looking at this money can be invested and we can do better things with it in the next year or 2 or 3, depends on the lifetime of the funding, you will come up with ideas and solutions down the road. Usually in the business world, they say any success comes from a problem. In order to have a business, you have to realize where the problem is. And not-for-profits have nothing or short of any problems. This is all what we deal with day to day. But our solutions, a lot of the times, are momentum or for the life cycle of the funding. But if it's centered around people, we would recenter our revenue and we will look at our revenue in a different way. This is a resource that I can do more with it. This is a resource that I can invest to do something with it. I need this money in 3 years. If I can negotiate with the government to release that funding a little bit earlier, which happens sometimes, I can get that funding to finance something that will generate revenue that I can serve that program in 2 years with. And moving with that mindset. It might sound, how can we do that? But you will know when you see it that I can leverage what I have today, and tomorrow I can generate something from it. There's a lot of opportunities out there from the challenges we have. There's a lot of opportunities in the problems we see, and we can leverage what we have all the time. It's just a shift of, I need to run a smooth program to, I need to solve that problem as soon as possible. How can I do that? How can I leverage what I have to solve the problems we have? If we move with the boxed problem, with the boxed program problem, which means I'm just going to deal with this program, I'm going to create that box and I'm going to serve that box, we will end up at some point with a bigger problem, because people have leaned on your program for a while. People haven't moved on from this program for a while. And then what's going to happen? I don't have the money and I still have more problems because people are coming to me asking for more solutions. Financial capacity should be a target and a goal for organizations. I remember when we first started, we always had a saying, you guys are doing great building your empire. And I said, there's no empire building in what we're doing at all. This is not the mindset that we're thinking about. The mindset is to create solutions. That solution sometimes dictates capacity. And if I need to have capacity, I have to build what you call empire, but that's not an empire. That's meeting people's needs. And the solution for that, or the mindset for that, if we are not needed tomorrow, we will donate what we have as an organization to other organizations that have a bigger problem. Let's say there's no homelessness anymore for seniors and everybody is living happily ever after. These assets can be utilized for another problem in this community. As an organization that owns assets around the province, I'm looking into developing more solutions. If I have housing units, to this point, we have a plan to create 400 and odd affordable housing units across the province. If I want to create those programs and then seniors don't need it anymore, I will pick up the phone in another organization for women or for indigenous people or for youth and say, would you like to utilize those space? I don't need them anymore. So that is not for community. We don't empire build. For community, we build solutions. And when we don't have the problem, solutions can be passed on to somebody else and can be utilized for something else. That is not going to happen because we will always have poverty in our communities. And just to answer the taboo that we have around this idea is very important. Some organizations don't want to build capacity because they are afraid to be looked at as they are building empire or they are working in silo. This was never our problem. We work with anybody else. We partner with every other organization and we make sure that our work doesn't overlap. And we are putting our 50% if some other organization could put their 50%. Focusing on outcomes, something I addressed earlier, so I'm going to move to the next one. Thank you. Dialogue with funders and government. Being transparent is very important. I will be very honest, it's not always in our favor, but we have to do it. We have to make sure that we are explaining what we want to do clearly. It's not always understood because I feel like there's the book called Men from Mars and Women from Venus. Sometimes I think we speak different languages as community and government, which I hope one day to see it elevated, but it does happen. It does happen that we speak a language sometimes that we don't understand each other. The solution for that is more dialogue and more transparency and more conversations and more explaining why we're doing it that way and how can we do it better than what we're doing it today. I remember we said in a conference earlier that the mentalities that presented certain problems will not be the same mentalities that solve it. If we need to change, we need to change our mindset. And listening to each other is very important to reach better outcomes. Sometimes human nature, we all put our cape on and say, I will be the only one that create those solutions. This is not how it works in the real life. You will not be able the only solution and you will not be the one that present the only solution. As an organization, we have to listen to our clients. We have to listen to the people that we represent. Our organization only exists because of them. And we have to listen to our funders, but also we have to advocate and inform. It's very important to use that relationship as an informing relationship. Sometimes it will seem difficult. Sometimes it will seem as there's conflicts, but this is the nature of change. Once you want to change something, people resist. Once you want to do something in a different way, there is a resistance that happens. And it's all of us, including myself, that we resist change. But we need to always advocate that there is better ways of doing something. I would love to live in a world that government and community come together every year, every end of funding and discuss how can we do this better next time? What did we do wrong? The reporting system that we have of sending narratives and numbers, it's all about auditing and talking about numbers. It's not talking about people. Talking about people needs to be people sitting in the same room and discussing that. This is one of the changes that I would love us to see at some point soon in our lifetime. Because I think homelessness is fixable. I think the only problem is policy and systems. It's not people. It's not just the lack of housing. These are the outcomes. But the real problem is the people that hold the decisions are taking too many decisions. Most of them are not in the right direction. Some of them are, but a lot of them are not. And that's what we're trying now to have dialogues and talk about and make sure that we advocate for. I think this is the hardest part of what we're doing. And I think that's why we have webinars like that and have conferences and we meet together in order to elevate those kind of challenges as we move forward. Emphasis on systems. Sorry.
Yeah.
I spoke about that. To invest in the public system is very important. And to give freedom to community to invest is very important. And that's what we have taken in and said to ourselves. We cannot just sustain this today. And when we speak to, usually the mindset is, you have to spend it all on this. And we say, we spent it all on this and that, and we got better outcomes, and we created more capacity that will save you money in the future. This is usually a resistance point. But you can have conversations with leadership in the government. You can have conversations, and a lot of the times you will get better outcomes. Those kind of transparency when it comes to public funding create a lot of solutions and create a lot of better outcomes in the future. Next, please.
Thank you so much. Well, you already mentioned part of this section about scaling, but if we dive into scaling and revenue diversification, I think everyone is quite curious to know more about it. And
Yeah,
so you mentioned the figure in the history of your organization about a growth from $12,000 to $24 million in assets in 8 years. But can you talk more about what are the main drivers of this growth and how did you start generating revenue beyond grants or about diversification? And
yeah,
can we talk also about another target of yours, which is a 60% target for independent revenue? So do you plan to use your
yeah,
equity and the challenges
yeah,
associated
yeah.
to it?
Thank you. Um, it's a scale. It's 8 years as of today, but it was 7 years because we didn't buy anything this year yet. But I will humble myself for 8 years. But I would like us to see us creating more capacity and more resources for our community. It is heartwarming to see the outcomes of what we have today. But years ago, when we sat down, and I was always thinking about what is the next step, never my intention was I want to have more assets. It was more that we need this to do that. We need this to tackle this problem. And I remember we always had these conversations. We always have those sometimes arguments of debates of why you're moving fast, why are we doing this? And the answer is because it's needed. And if we think slow, we will just be another problem and a burden in this community. We're utilizing funds, we're spending it, and the outcomes are not much. But now, in 8 years, and hopefully in 15, 20 years, we will have thousands of units around the province. My hope is in the next 5 years to have 1,000 units across the province. And say these are units that are available for older adults. And we can have way more than that in the next 10 years, hopefully, and say our elders in this province don't have this problem. I'm trying to say the focus here is not money. We never thought about how much money we want to have and how much money we want to use. But in order to be moving forward, it needs to focus on the main goal. The main goal is we need solutions across the board. When we have a problem, we need to think with the mindset, how can we solve it? When we have a problem, we don't need to be um, taking our time to analyze it and make. Sometimes I see plans being created over 2 and 3 years and then implemented after a year, and the problem is already obsolete and have diverted or evolved into another problem. This mindset needs leadership that have a vision, needs leadership that believe in what they are doing and willing to risk everything for it. And I mean everything here that is reasonable. Means that it's not just about keeping a position. And I was lucky to be a founder for the organization that I'm in, that I can present this idea. And usually when you have joining uh, members and you have board, they believe in you. That's why they are around you. That's why they are there, because they see there's differences. Down that road, you will see changes, you will see advancement, and that change again. Human being resist, but you will have the type of people that believe in that type of way of doing things and believe on how to do work and how to create solutions around yourself. So surrounding yourself with a team that can advance that with you, starting from leadership to the medium management and the directors, it's very important to get people to understand that vision and to talk about it more and to clarify what is the problem that we're trying to define here and how we're trying to get outcomes. Assets-based thinking was very important for us, but it wasn't the main goal. It was solution-driven. Timing and readiness. You never say it's too fast. It's all about when the window opens. It's always about to be ready with an idea for the problem you have. Don't say this problem is not for today. When you see a problem today, have a solution for it and leave it in your drawer. It will come ready at some point. Sometimes we see that mindset with the government when they say you have a funding for 1 month to apply for $50 million housing units. And I'm like, and that happened during COVID. And I was like, this is so narrow window. And if we weren't prepared, we wouldn't know what to do. And we didn't know what the problem is. I wouldn't be able to fill out. But the mindset of always looking at your problems and look at them as one day we will work on this. That's why we have a lot of innovative people that join our team. And when they come and say, there's an idea about this, and we're like, yeah, we thought about this and we have a solution for it, but we need to find the resource or reallocate resources for them. Today, we are allocating our resource for our outreach program. A couple of years ago, it was our food program. A couple of years before that, it was our housing program. And we're allocating that surplus that we're moving in revenue from the social enterprise and diversifying our income. You have to have your own income. You have to aim as an organization to be independent from government only funding. When we talk to organizations and they are 100% depending on programs, it is very dangerous. If you have been around for 100 years or 50 years, it's not gonna sustain you forever. Why? Programs end, programs shut down. What I have to do is I think about how can, as a responsible organization, to be able to cover the needs for the population that I'm presenting on the long term. And thinking like that, it doesn't come based on programs. Thinking like that as leaders and as organizations is how can I create capacity? How can I increase the capacity of what I'm doing? And to start to work with others is very important. System and scaling thinking. When you scale, if you do it alone, you will scare too many people and you will scare too many organizations and you will scare the government. But when you're always in conversations and they are seeing outcomes while you're showing them what you're doing, is very important. Communication in that process is one of the most important pieces. You need to communicate what you're doing. And believe me, even if you communicate it, it's not going to be enough. You will talk about what you're doing, you will explain what you're doing, and people will still be surprised with the outcomes. And that's the nature of growth and being fast forward thinker and being someone that want to create. I'm not saying I'm that person. I'm saying this organization is a fast forward implementer and they implement solutions faster than normal. But we don't have a normal. We have a problem. And that's what we were thinking about going into the problems that we're going into. We have problems. These problems need solution. Let's figure it out. If the solution appears today, we will do it. If the solution appears in 5 years, we will do it. But we will look for it. We will try to create resources for it. And we'll try to restructure our funding in a way to fund things in the highest priority way. Right now, we see that the two highest priorities are housing and health and community services for seniors. I think we are somehow successful on the housing front, but we're really struggling on the other end, which is the community services. Why? Because it's an ongoing program that need to be funded. And that's when we said our target is to be 60% self-sufficient organization that fund our own programs and don't rely on government funding. So we actually come to the sense of being self-sufficient. I can fund these programs as an organization, and when people needs are increased, we can meet them, and then the government funding would be a surplus, and I can leverage what I have to say to the government. I'm going to put X amount of dollars for this program. I need you to match it so we can deliver better and higher capacity service. Rather than serving 50 people, we can serve 100 or 150. That scaling goal has to come from an enterprise mindset. It will not stay on the mindset of I need to do what I'm doing the same way we have done it for the last 50 years. That shift in mindset needs to start thinking differently of what I have is a strength. I have knowledge as an organization, I have resources, and I have revenue. That has to build assets, so it's sustainable revenue, and it has to build capacity. And when I start to think in that way as an organization, I will start to see different outcomes, and we will start to see certain outcomes. And I think we were a good example for that early in our journey. I think until we reach 10 years old, we're still a young organization, but from experience and from achievement, I think we're very blessed and very achieving in a lot of the points and areas that we have worked on in the last 8 years. When you are thinking about using equity, think about it that way. First of all, equity is one of the highest leverage that you have as an organization. Why? Because you own it. You have funding that you created into it. But when you are creating funding out of it, don't create short solution funding. Means don't liquidate what you have or refinance, for example, what you have. in the mindset of, I'm going to spend it in the next year on a program. Create another long-term solution with it. Short-term programs will become a possibility after a while. It's not a short-term achievement. Sometimes you will have to still get those government projects funding, and we all do that. We still do that. But you are moving away from it as you're building long-term resources. In 30 years or 20 years or 15 years, it depends what programs you're creating. You will have programs that are self-sustainable by the revenues that this organization is generating. It's a simple math. It's the same idea of how businesses function. In the beginning, when you are an entrepreneur, you don't generate any income to yourself in the first or second year. But after that, you start to make profit. And some people have a frown upon reaction to the word profit, not for profit. Not for profit is not meant not to do profit. Not for profit is meant to direct their profit into the community. And that's a big gap that we miss. And we sit with people on any level and they say, you're not meant to make extra money. Actually, as a not-for-profit, as a healthy not-for-profit, you're supposed to have cash in your bank that cover you for 6 months to a year. As a not-for-profit, you're supposed to have assets in case government funding on contracts burn down or they had to be canceled. You don't have to shut down everything all at once. This is the mindset of the healthy not-for-profit that needs to be built. So they need to be self-sustainable. And why is that? Because government funding doesn't always shut down because the need is not there. Sometimes it's a budget, sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's a reason that has nothing to do with the problem itself. But as a not-for-profit, you are responsible in front of the people that you're serving in order to create sustainable programs for them. That happens on two levels: being self-sufficient to an extent, having some sort of revenue or income that you can service those programs at a minimum capacity. So 3 years ago, we had a program that used to have 4 or 5 people. Now it has 1 person. So when the government program shut down, we didn't shut down the program. We kept it at a smaller capacity that can deal with the high security needs and the high security individuals that we see and the highest complex needs in the community. That does not shut what we have because it's our responsibility to be sustainable for the people that we serve. It's our responsibility to think that way and not to think something. That downsize will create some lashback sometimes. People wouldn't like that sometimes, but you still have to deal with what you have in the beginning. You will get criticism, you will get feedback, and we always take it in the sense of what can we do next time? Are we doing it the best way possible or can we do this better? Everything we see as a challenge from internal or external factor, it's important for us to grow and important for our maturity as an organization. Make sure that when you're doing what you're doing, your mission is in the center of what you're doing. And you need to see it the most as an organization, as a leadership. You need to see that what you're doing serves your mission. Don't be serving seniors and all of a sudden move to a different direction. When I was studying strategy, there was a very, very good statement that was said. A lot of not-for-profits lose the sight of why they were created, which is people, to become only looking about themselves as an entity. And if you do that, you become a business. You're not a not-for-profit anymore, even if you put the money into the community. Not-for-profits always have the center of their focus is the problems they have and the people they're serving. And that's one of the most important things that we shouldn't lose as an insight, as an organization, when we're moving forward to serve people. Because the more you grow, the more you're going to lose that insight. Challenges of growth.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Challenges of growth. I would say around every corner. Just don't lift a rock up, because you will see challenges everywhere. It's part of what we do. If you love what you're doing, you're in the right place. If you look at challenges as an opportunity, you're in the right place. I'm not saying you're not going to be stressed. However, people think that I don't get stressed sometimes in the organization, but I do. We all get stressed, but the stress is a drive to figure out what to do next. It's very important for us as a community to make sure that the people that are doing the work in the right place. These are the people that are passionate about that work. They want to find solutions, and mistakes happen all along, and challenges are all along that journey. Why? Because you're growing, and growing always have pain. You're moving forward, and when you're moving forward, you always need to have variables that always needs to be adjusted and corrected. And when you have a bigger capacity, you will always have problems and more problems. When you have more units to function, more units to operate, now we're close to 80 odd units. It's something that we cannot just look away from. There is maintenance that needs to happen. There is work that needs to happen. And yes, I moved to that stage to build, but now I need to build capacity and service around it. So you cannot move in a linear mindset. You need to move in a parallel mindset. There's a lot of aspects that need to be met and a team that needs to be built. And you're successful when you have a strong team, not just when you have good achievements. A strong team is a key to all that work moving forward. Next, please.
Well, thank you so much, Mohamed. We have a few minutes left, so I think we are going to really focus on the wrap up of the conversation. So, can you give us some operational insights? You talked about experience earlier. Can you maybe talk about the back ends of your approach, and also a topic that that came several times in the sector is about succession of leadership and succession. So can you talk a little bit about that? And yes, in really a few minutes, and then we'll have maybe a couple of minutes to wrap up the webinar.
You cut off in the middle for a second there. Can you say that again, please? The leadership and succession, you said, right?
Oh yeah. Like yes.
Yeah.
Can we talk about a little bit of the lesson learned, the leadership and succession, and we have a couple of minutes to do that to stay in the
Okay.
time.
I will. um, it's very important to understand that, first of all, charity, in the sense of the word charity, is not just doing for nothing. You are building nation, you're building problems, you're building human beings, and you're dealing with lives. So yes, we are a charity, but we also nation builders, and we have to have that mindset to lead in the right direction and to own what we're doing as leaders in this community. With that mindset in mind, um, you cannot just be rigid on the path you want to take. You have to be very flexible when you're taking paths in this journey. You will be faced with blocks. We just dealing now with the funding that when you correct a piece, another problems arise. And because you are dealing with too many parties, you're dealing with more challenges and you're dealing with more obstacles. People are not meant always to do that, but it does happen and you have to deal with it. And flexibility is essential to move forward. And you cannot just stop and say, I'm not moving forward on this anymore. You have to always make sure you're moving forward for the sake of the people that you're serving. Trial and error within strong governance. It's very important to have a team, starting with the board of directors and moving down to your directors and chiefs. And everybody else to understand that mistakes are not punishable. Mistakes are a learning experience. We have a no blame culture. If you do a mistake, it's fine. If you hit a car or if you ruin the proposal, we move to next step and try to avoid it next time. We try to create systems as we move forward, and we try to create policies as we move forward. But keeping a space for people to be innovative and to give their 100% is very important, because you cannot be the only one coming with ideas as leaders. Everybody in the organization should be created and evolve to be a leader in what they are doing and to elevate that organization and move it forward. Early legal and financial guidance matters. You have to ask questions, you have to consult, you have to make sure you're doing things right. You will have problems no matter what, because again, you're dealing with people, but always make sure you're getting the right information. When we wanted to start our board of directors, we went to a lawyer, we had the bylaws drafted by them. We made sure that we're getting the right information, we're getting the right advice, and we have the right skill set. One of the reasons I asked someone to join me as a co-founder, because I knew I have weakness in certain areas, and I knew when I focus on certain areas, I will need somebody to help on other areas. I gave the idea and shared the idea with my colleague because I wanted this to be successful. This is not about you. This is not about me. This is about having this idea advanced and these solutions delivered to the level that needs to be delivered on. And it will never be delivered if it's centered around leadership and a person. In this kind of work, there is a bit of altruism and selflessness that needs to exist. Strategic discipline is opportunity selection. You have when you set your goal and you have your vision, you have to pursue that. And as long as the problem still exists and we are working without your having, yes, you can be flexible on the path, but you have to be laser focused on where you want to achieve. It's very important not to be distracted with opportunities, because sometimes you will have someone asking you to do something that you shouldn't be doing as an organization. And I've seen organizations go outside of their mandate to do extra things and they lose their target. The solution is to try to bring those funding proposals to the goal of what you see as a solution. Because when you do that, you're actually serving the people, you're honest with your mission, and you're also having effective outcomes. And you're talking to the funders and so on, telling them, I just need a tweak. It will serve what you want. And sometimes you have to give in some ideas, because on the government level, the talk is budget, the talk is outcomes when it comes to finances a lot of the times. But your focus usually is not there. So the language are different. But we need to bring that to a common conversation, and you have to compromise sometimes and meet in the middle. Next, please.
Thank you so
We
much.
have 1 minute left, Mo. It's super
Okay,
interesting to hear you, but we will have to cut this not
no
short, your
problem.
speech short.
Well, the good
But
news is that it was the closing summary, so just a list of what Mohamed already talked about.
I
So
would
it was
invite
yeah.
people who want to ask questions to ask away. What we will do,
Please.
we will send you written answers. To all of you after this,
Yes.
and maybe Gabriel, we can wrap it up.
Yes. Sorry, I was sharing. Well, thank you so much, Mohamed. So yeah,
My
we are
pleasure.
going to, yeah, that was a really meaningful and inspiring experience that you shared. So I think we all agree on that. And yeah, for all the attendees, feel free to add your questions in the chat. We are going to let the chat open for a bit after the end of this webinar, and we are going to follow up with you by email. And I think, Mohamed, you said that you were okay as well to sharing your contact for people
Yeah,
interested. Yeah,
no
that's
problem.
so nice of you. Okay. And so it is 2 p.m. in Montreal and 3:30, right, in St. John's, Mohamed. So that's the end of the time that we have scheduled. So just I wish a great day of a great rest of the day. Sorry, to all of the attendees, and so you will receive a follow-up. There will be a recording of the webinar. Thank you for coming, and just note that we have a web page at the center on the center website about the knowledge sharing webinar series, and we will have an event on February 25 about digital strategies. So feel free to check the website of the center or of our monthly newsletter and LinkedIn as well. You will have all of the information there. So thank you so much. And I think we are going to wrap it here. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.